Yep, you saw that right. It's not clickbait. 6,000 life gain per second on this build. And you can see in the background that, yeah, we can actually gain a ton of health per second. Now I decided to go in blind and just try some of the steel skills, and boy, was I surprised. This is the Lansing Steel Champion. Hey guys, Big Ducks here, and welcome back to the channel. Now, this is one that really did surprise me, as I said. This was a build I wasn't expecting to be too great. I decided that I wanted to try out the new steel skills after, well, the revamped steel skills. I know that they had been pretty mediocre in the past, but I wanted to give them a shot. So I just looked up a couple people on Peewee.Ninja, just saw what some people were doing, and then just decided to kind of go in blind to it. I took my tree from my Impale Champion Cyclone, and I took that tree, modified it a little bit, and here we are. We've got a build that can easily get close to 7,000 life. It can gain 6, 7, 8,000 life per second, depending on the situation. It does pretty respectable damage. I mean, with some really budget gear and a 5-link, you can get 6 million damage, and as soon as you upgrade it to a 6-link, it's 8 million damage or more, and I haven't even really invested that much into the character. So remember guys, if you enjoy my content, make sure to like this video so that more people can see it. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content similar to this. And last but not least, if you want to get a sneak peek at some of the new builds that I'm going to be playing, follow me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/bigducks. And without further ado, let's take a look at a couple of things that we did, and then we'll get into the guide. But also remember to keep in mind, a lot of these clips are on only a 5-link. Dude, who needs to fucking try when you can literally just face tank shit? Like, honestly, at this point. Like, who cares, dude? Who gives a shit? Who cares if the mods are fucking super difficult? Like, who cares? Doesn't matter. Who cares if it's like a fucking giant AoE, crit strike, monsters attack faster map? Who cares? Less armor? Don't matter. Easy. Easy clap. Alright. Okay, laser beams. Probably shouldn't stand in the laser beams. Okay.
Enemies approaching.
What is that? Okay, more laser beams. Okay. Okay, it turns. Cool, it turns. It turns around, good. Nice. So how do you learn those bosses on fucking hardcore, dude? Now I'm just gonna be blinded by all my loot on the ground. No, what the fuck is this? Okay, is that it? Jesus Christ. Ugh, I just wish that the rogues wouldn't, like, stop and fucking fight shit. Like, I remember Chris saying that, no, the rogues will never get in your way. They're not gonna get in your way, dude. And yet, that seems to be all that they do. They don't actually seem to help that much. They seem to just get in the way. I have no idea how this fight goes, though.
Attack. Strike.
Oh, is this a DPS check? Okay.
You have chosen death. Freedom or death. The abyss calls.
That was a big ass fucking wave, boy. Jesus Christ. Okay, it's not a DPS check. Fuck, that wave is fucking spooky looking, dude.
Damn tyrant.
That boss seemed like a joke, dude. If you get, like, most of your enjoyment from World of Warcraft, right? Like, if you get most of the, like, of your, like, entertainment through WoW, it's very cheap in comparison to some hobbies. Like, if you buy a single game every 3 or 4 months, like a single, like, AAA game every 3 or 4 months, it's the same amount of money, so. I have to ask the big question, Alliance or Horde? The way that it goes nowadays is that there are not enough players to easily sustain Alliance. Unfortunately, most players are Horde nowadays, so I'm going to be making guilds on both sides, and I'll be playing on both sides most likely. Open the door, Adia. Let me in. Pillaged camp. What the fuck is this zone? Dude, I want that weapon. Can I have that weapon? Can I have that weapon, dude? Okay. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the fuck's going on,
There'll be
dude.
time for that.
Sun's Fury! Thank you, dear sister.
What was that fight? It felt so weird. All right, what is this? Oh, cannot be traded or modified. Nice. Where's my portal out? All of Steel is gonna be nerfed. It'll probably be nerfed to not work with impales done from other abilities. That's what I would assume. All right, so this is Awakener 8. This isn't my Awakener 8, this is a viewer's. I do want to try to tank a Death Beam to the face. Still London Realm? It is London Realm. It is what it is. 133? All right, we'll see if we can do it. 133 is not too bad. Yep, easy clap. Yeah, so I can tank the Death Beam to the face pretty easily. So it's Awakener 8, you can see that by the zone up here on the top right, 84. I can't show you because it's not mine. I'm doing this on London Realm, so the ping is a little bit rough for me. Oh, almost died because I didn't have my flasks. All right, so we see that being frozen, we still like can't just like mindlessly take the beam because he'll freeze us. I'd say Uber Elder is a significantly more difficult fight in a playstyle sense. Like I would say that the damage of this fight is similar, but Uber Elder is definitely a much more mechanically difficult fight. Like this fight, once you understand it, is not that bad. Like this is the only real struggle with the Cirrus fight, is just the fact that he does this constantly. He like teleports all over, and he fucking like goes invulnerable constantly. Like he's invulnerable for longer than he's like actually able to be hit. Don't know where he is. Yep. We actually survived that though, surprisingly. Also want to remind everyone that this is on a 5 link. I feel like, I don't know if you guys have noticed this as well, but I feel like sometimes when you fight Cirrus, you get versions of him where he doesn't do his abilities as frequently. And then other times he does his abilities like constantly. Like that's always the problem that I've had with this fight, is just the fact that sometimes, oh my God, you should have done the fight with me, dude. You should have been in here, what the hell? Playing a fucking horse stagger, dude. So guys, if you didn't enjoy what you saw there, always remember that I do have a ton of other build guides. You can check up in the top right corner of the video now for my latest build guide, which is for the Burning Beefton, Evolve Fireball, Flame Wall, Ignite Chieftain. Really tanky, tons of good damage. You should go check that build out. It's meant to farm simulacrums, by the way. But if you did enjoy, then here we are with Time to Steel, my Lancing Steel Impale champion. Now, I told you a little bit about this build, and I want to go over a few brief things before we begin. So the way that this build actually gets those crazy numbers that I was talking about, like 6, 7, 8,000 life gain per second, is a combination of a few things. So this build actually uses the Vitality Watcher's Eye. Now keep in mind this isn't really needed, but this is going to be a pretty big buff to our actual life gain per second. When I bought this, it was around 75, 80 chaos. It'll probably keep going down over time. However, 30 life gained for each enemy hit while affected by Vitality. However, that's not even the main thing. The main thing here is Poacher's Mark. Now you might remember that the Poacher's Mark, Warlord's Mark, and Assassin's Mark got reworked recently. Well, this one actually works pretty well for this build. Now, you are going to be gaining 48 life and 24 mana when enemies are hit by your attacks. Now, with Lancing Steel, you'll see here that it says fires 8 projectiles. Now, that is just the base version of the ability, right? So every time that you attack with this ability, you're going to be firing 8 projectiles. However, with this cool ability that we have here called Call of Steel, it's going to provide us steel shards. Now what these steel shards do is, you'll see that I have these like basically swords sticking out of my back. This allows us to be doing 24 projectiles every time that we cast this. So instead of it doing 8, you'll see now it shoots a ton more projectiles. So when you take into account that each time that we hit an enemy, we're gaining 48 plus life per hit, we're going to be hitting 24 times per cast, and that's not even with Dying Sun. If we have Dying Sun, it's 30 times per cast. So think about that. Let's refresh this. Let's get our steel shards back, and think about the fact that when we do this, we're going to be attacking with 3 machine guns constantly at all times, right? Because we're going to be gaining back infinite life, infinite mana. We won't have to worry about any mana problems, and we're going to be getting 48 life as well as 29 from this back every time we hit. And with some short math, even if you're doing a Call of Steel every 3 attacks, our attack speed gets to the point where with everything going, with frenzy charges and all of that, we get down to about a 0.25 attack time. That's 90 attacks per second. So you take 90, you times by all that life and mana gain, and you get a ton of life gain. Now, let's actually go into a map and then I'll talk about some more specifics about the build. I kind of just wanted to give you an idea of why we get those insane numbers. We're going to be running a tier 16 Atoll. Now, this is only on Awakener 5 because that's all that I have at the moment, but we are going to be running 4 minion sextants as well as an Elder Scarab, 2 fragments. We're going to be running an Einhar and Beyond on this map. So this is a pretty juicy map. Now, the interesting thing about this build is that as the density of packs increases, our clear speed actually increases. So one thing that you'll notice is that I am going to just be ripping these Impale stacks basically out of the enemies with Call of Steel. You'll wonder that, you know, I'm attacking and then all of a sudden you'll see them just kind of explode, right? So this is what the build works as. We impale them a bunch of times with Lancing Steel, and then we rip the Impales out, and it causes all of the damage that we did with those attacks to be reflected again. So what that means is that if you hit with 7 Impales is what this build is able to do right now, when you hit Call of Steel, it is doing all of the damage of those 7 Impales worth right when you click that button. And it's an AoE. So while you're clearing, if you hit like 10 enemies with 7 Impales each, they're basically AoEing each other for 70 times the amount of damage that you do per hit. It's honestly kind of ridiculous. And what I mean by the clear increases with the density is that the more enemies that you're hitting, since we're piercing and shooting like 30 of these projectiles a time, the more enemies that you're hitting, the more explosions that there will be. Now you could kind of notice how my life is just like jumping up and down constantly, and I'm not really in any fear of dying except to one-shots. Now, that's because with the Vitality Watcher's Eye, we actually don't really have to worry about anything, right? Each enemy that we're hitting, we're getting back 30 life for each hit. And if we're hitting 30 times per attack, per enemy, it's quite a bit of life. It's honestly kind of ridiculous how much life gain that this build can have. And that's not even counting, like, we have lifesteal, right? Like, we have lifesteal, we have Enduring Cry, we have, you know, like, health regen outside of all of that. So with all of these things together, for the most part, unless we get one shot, we're pretty much immortal. We can survive most things, yeah? Now, I do want to say that I am not going as tanky as you possibly could with this build. It would be very, very easy to get like 7k life. You could get the Jibaku Jewel to get Divine Flesh and become even tankier. There's a ton of extra stuff that you could do to make yourself tankier in this build. You can kind of see I'm just kind of sitting in the Beyond mobs, the Beyond bosses, just staying right in their faces and not really worrying about it at all, right? So super powerful build, and like I was saying, you could get a ton more tanky. Like, I'm not tanky at all. I'm using a Devoto's. I could be using a random rare helmet that would give me, you know, like 100 life, among other things. My gear is not really optimized. I didn't spend a ton of money on it. The most expensive thing was getting the chest piece. But let's take a look at the boss. So you'll see that when, let me get these little enemies out of the way first. So when we actually hit the boss, right, without Poacher's Mark, you can kind of see how much healing we do, right? Now, when I do Poacher's Mark on there, you're going to notice that the healing will be like quadrupled. Let me see if I can actually get hit by this boss. Hello, hit me. So you'll see that when we get hit, we almost go back to full life instantly, right? I don't know why I have no idea why my filter is showing Piran Disblazon as being a super good item. But it is what it is, I guess. But you can kind of see how much healing that we got here. So you saw how I almost got one shot by that boss there, right? It's because I have such low life. I really am not spec'ing the defenses properly, but you can kind of get an idea of how much healing that this can do. And keep in mind as well that that isn't even the full power of it, right? Bosses tend to have resistances to curses, so we are healing a little bit less here. So on just random enemies that you're fighting, it's gonna be even more powerful. Now remember, that was a tier 16 map. I mean, it is Awakener 5, so it is what it is, but it's got 4 sextants. We did a bunch of stuff on the map. It was a really, really high tier, high investment map, and it was very, very easy and very safe. If you did decide to actually put some more time into life and such in this build and get, you know, better items than this paw amulet that I have with just life on it and such, you would do a lot better than I would. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the items. I want to talk a little bit about the skills that we're actually using and how they work, because this is a little bit different than what most builds do. So the whole idea behind this build has to do with Call of Steel. Now you're gonna see that we have this jewel here called Lord of Steel. This one is the best as far as I'm aware because I'm pretty sure that line that says Call of Steel causes 48% increased reflected damage. I'm pretty sure that that's equivalent to a more multiplier. I'm not 100% positive on that, but when you take this out, it doesn't hit even close to as hard. So the idea being is that, like I told you when we were in the map, every time that you attack the enemy, you're hitting them with an Impale. We do have a 100% Impale chance with this. No, it says 60% to Impale enemies on hit there. That's not correct. Between the Master of Metal, the ability itself giving 20%, so that's 20, 40, and then we have 40 from Impale, and then we have 20 from Dread Banner. We've got a 100% chance to Impale, right? So it is a 100% chance. Now, every Impale that you do on the enemy causes this little reflection bonus, right? So Impales only last a certain amount of time. So once you've stacked 7, you can actually use this Call of Steel ability that comes with all of the Steel skills to rip all of those Impales out of the enemy, and it gives you Steel Shards. Now you do get Steel Shards depending on how many Impales that you rip out, but it also just does give you 4 plus an extra 4 every 0.5 seconds. Now you could spam this if you wanted to just to get a ton of them back, right? So you're moving and you just want a bunch of Steel Shards quickly. You can just spam it if you want to, or you could even just hit it once and then let it regen over time. But this basically takes all 7 of those Impales and rips them out and does the damage in a big AoE simultaneously. So while you're clearing, you probably saw that I would hit everything and then I would rip all the Impales out of them. It does a ton of damage. And when you're doing single target on bosses, you do kind of want to be like hitting 3 times, moving a little bit, ripping the Impales out, hitting. Because the thing about it is, you can actually just leave those, right? You don't need to stand there and fight the boss with it. You can just pop it on them and then keep running. Now, beyond that, with the links for the actual ability, they're kind of strange in comparison to what you may be used to on a normal build. Now, Lancing Steel actually directly scales with projectiles. And what I mean by that is that it has a ton of added damage and additional projectiles are going to shotgun, essentially. So that is why we're using greater multiple projectiles on this ability, as well as why we have the Dying Sun Ruby Flask. It's just to give us more projectiles. Other than that, it's actually pretty hard to get any more links that make sense. These are all of the ones that we can really do. Slower projectiles is another one, but Maim ended up being better. We did some math in Path of Building, and it turns out that Flesh and Stone plus Maim didn't seem to be doing more damage than just having Maim in the link. We tried swapping out Maim for slower proj. We tried swapping out Herald of Purity for the Maim plus Flesh and Stone. It didn't seem to be more damage. I think either way is going to be fine, but that's what we came up with. So it's Brutality, Greater Multiple Projectiles, Vicious Projectiles, Impale, Maim, and Lancing Steel. Other than that, there are a couple other interesting things about the build. The fact that we do use a ton of auras. We're using Pride, we're using Herald of Purity. Using Vitality, this is just a level 1 Vitality. We maxed the precision as much as we could. Since we are a crit build, we're not going RT. So we don't have RT, we are a crit build, so we do need some accuracy, and we are a champion. However, we didn't go these 2 nodes because the Fortitude, pretty good for this build. We use a bunch of auras, they're linked to Enlighten. We have a Ancestral Protector that's with Calling Strike. This gives us a ton of attack speed. Now, this is something that is very, very important to the build and something that you need to know while scaling this build. This is not a melee skill. I know we got a big ass sword here, and I know that we're hitting with a sword and we're attacking with a sword. It's not a melee skill. This ability does not have the melee tag, and it does not scale in any way with melee damage or any other melee effects. What that means is that Ancestral Warchief gives melee damage, doesn't actually do anything for us. Things like these nodes here where it says melee critical strike chance don't do anything for us. Anything that says specifically melee does not work. Like this node here that says increase melee attack speed, increase melee physical damage, that does not work. Now when you see nodes that say increase physical damage with 2-handed melee weapons, that does work. So keep in mind when you're actually trying to scale this build, anything that just says specifically melee does not work. That includes gems, that includes items, that includes stats, that includes pretty much anything. Melee damage doesn't do anything for this build. This is a projectile physical attack. Now, we are using Lionized Vision. That is because it gives us a pseudo 7 link with Pierce, gives us some mana fixing, a decent amount of life, and some okay armor. You'll notice that I have the Admiral skin. That is from one of the fights that you probably saw in the preview that I showed you, the little highlight clip here. The chest piece looked pretty cool. I comboed this helmet with it because it kind of looks like the captain from Risk of Rain 2, so I thought it looked pretty good, so I use it as a skin transfer, and that's what this is. That's why I look like that. But this is actually Lionized Vision. It's a pretty good chess piece for this because it gives us the pseudo 7 link. Now, like I said, you don't have to use Devotos. It's not actually amazing for the build. I just wanted the attack speed and movement speed. You could get a lot more chaos resistance would be good in this build. You could itemize quite a bit better, and you'll see all of that in the Path of Building. Now, something I do want to talk about with the build is leveling, because the leveling on this build was actually pretty insane. The only gear that we really had was a tabula and then a couple other little pieces of gear, but with the tabula and with just using the recipe to upgrade weapons over time, we were demolishing stuff with splitting steel. That recipe that I'm talking about is you just go to the vendor, you go and grab whatever weapon you want. We'll do this bastard sword, right? You take this, you need to go and grab a blacksmith's whetstone, and you also need to get a blue or yellow rustic sash. So you can either use an orb of transmutation or you can use an orb of alchemy. So you go to the vendor here, you purchase a rustic sash, and you can either, here, I'll actually grab 2 of them so you guys can see. You grab 2 of those there, you can either do blue or you can do yellow, and then when you vendor this item here with these 3 things, it's going to give you that same item base, but with a physical damage roll. Now you see this can roll anywhere from 40 to 49, however, this is with a blue one. If you put in a yellow one, the roll goes 1 tier higher, and it can go all the way up to 64. So as you progress through the game, you can keep replacing your weapon with better weapons because of this recipe. Now I personally just use blue flasks, or rather blue belts most of the time. I didn't worry about yellow belts because I didn't want to spend my alchemy orbs. You can keep replacing your weapon with that, and honestly, it's kind of insane. We were just AoE clearing down entire screens while leveling. It was some of the fastest leveling I've done in quite some time. Now, beyond that, you can do all the standard extra stuff for leveling, especially if you don't have a lot of items. Just make sure that you're looking for links, make sure that you're trying to get a 4 link, trying to get movement speed boots, trying to make sure that you're moving as quickly as you can through the axe. A lot of people don't realize that the way that you actually level faster is just by moving faster and keeping on going. The more time that you spend in town, the more time that you kill too many enemies, you're really going to be slowing yourself down. Try to stay maybe 2-ish levels underneath whatever zone that you're in and just keep pushing on and going faster if you can. I also want to remind you that if you're having issues while leveling and you're dying a lot, you really should look to use your crafting bench to craft some resists on your gear. You get access to 20 resist of any kind at level 12. As soon as you go and free Helena, as long as you've got that, you can craft your gear no problem whatsoever. So just make sure to get 3 and 4 links, make sure that you're upgrading your weapon constantly, make sure that you're keeping track of your resist. You want your resist to be at 75 at all times if you can, and just keeping on top of your health and all that other good stuff. I talk about most of this stuff over in the Path of Building, so let's jump into there. I'll show you guys all of the stuff that we got going on. Let's go over to the Path of Building. Now that we're over here in the Path of Building, I do want to give one warning. Right now there's some kind of issue going on with Pastebin where they're not loading into Path of Building properly. Sometimes like the pastebins are just getting deleted. I will be including a pastebin down in the description below. However, if that doesn't work for some reason because pastebin is just deleted or something, make sure that you join my Discord. The link is down in the description below, and there is a channel called PoE Builds that has all of my builds in it. I'm going to include a text file that has like the full import section here. Like when you generate this giant command of in infinite letters, it will have a text file in there with that in it, because when you're sharing with Pastebin for some reason, if I take this and I try to import it, it just 404s, right? Like for some reason, Pastebin just isn't working right now. So I will get a Pastebin working, but if it's not working, make sure you go in the Discord and do those things. So just be aware of that. Now, beyond that, I typically say with my Path of Buildings that these can answer most of the questions, and I suggest that you invest some time learning Path of Building for pretty much anything that you do in Path of Exile. Now, I want you to notice that I have multiple leveling trees here, and we also do have a leveling, or rather an endgame tree with a Thread of Hope. This is specifically for the Impale effect. Don't worry about the rest of the nodes there. It is actually a decent node, just a one-off. Grab some Impale effect and attack damage and such there, the increased buff from our totem, and that's pretty much it from that there. But that isn't really needed. You can get everything you need with the full tree. Now keep in mind as well, when it comes to the Ascendancy, I show the different Ascendancies that you take as you level, in what order you should be taking them, all the way up through the end game. Also, I do show which points that you're supposed to be taking when you're supposed to be taking them, right? So I'll show you that at level 35, you're going to be wanting to have those points. At level 55, you'll want to move over to here. At level 70, you'll get quite a bit more because you're going to have the skill point quests. Then finally around endgame, you'll fill in a couple extra points, and then at 100, you'll have the full tree. So notice I swapped out some points here because once you're at the very end game tree, it's better off to go for some jewel sockets among other things instead of these leech nodes here. You can't actually leech anymore. So beyond that, I do have a skills section here. There are leveling skills, and these are in order of importance. So keep in mind that the order of these actual skills is important to the abilities. Just grab all of these, and then you can transition into the gems that I have here whenever you do get them as you level up. So like when you get access to Impale and Brutality and Vicious Projectiles, you should be swapping out these lower gems down here for those when you are able to. All of the abilities that we use are in here. I also do have like the awakened versions of the gems, as well as this splitting steel here is just optional for clear. If you want to use that instead of lancing steel, you have to swap them out. Now I do have multiple item sets as well. These are suggested items, and you're gonna notice that it's just a couple of uniques as well as some pretty simple rares. You can get over 8 million DPS with just a 6-link and some random rares, Lionized Vision, and a Terminus S, right? This is a 5 Chaos Sword at most. The Dying Sun isn't needed, it is good. It does reduce your DPS by over 1 million if you don't have this, but the price of this is going way down. That's pretty much all that you have to worry about here. I do have my own gear that I'm personally using if you want to see the items that I used in the clips from earlier. I also do have some expensive items. Now you're going to notice here that the DPS jumps up to 30 million. You'll notice on some of these items I have specifically things that say enable such and such in the configuration. If you do enable the proper things in the configuration, you are getting like 44 million DPS, but that's unrealistic because these items are like ridiculously expensive. I'm talking these are like, you're gonna be spending like a mirror's worth of currency to get these. You don't need these, and I say that on each of the items. I say these are meant to be goal items, you do not need these, right? So that being said, if you do look at some of these items, you'll notice that I have written in the items themselves that there are little stats here that you can look at. It'll say, this sword is extremely cheap and better than most other expensive rares. It provides solid crit, movement speed. I talk about the different items and why I use them in the actual description of the item itself. I've edited the items and put those in there. Lots of cool stuff in here. Beyond that, I do have a full note section. You'll notice that I have alternate quality gems. I've got a bunch of frequently asked questions. This should answer most of the questions that you have. Look here first. Remember, those don't answer your question, go over to the Discord. Link is down in the description. Beyond that, I have like talking about the actual damage of the build, leveling, what uniques you should grab for leveling, all that kind of good stuff. And in the configuration, most of this is set up properly, so don't worry about changing this too much, just keep it where it is. One thing to note is that changing the projectile travel distance is going to pretty significantly impact the damage of the build. Like if you go up to 50 projectile travel distance, you're going to notice the damage goes down by about 2 million. And the more that you go up, the lower it's going to get. 10 is roughly in the face of the enemy, or like that far away from the enemy. So 0 to 10 does the same amount of damage. That's where you're considered point blank. So try to stay close to the enemy while you're actually doing damage. Other than that, not much to talk about. Check the notes. Check all the items and the notes on the actual items themselves, and if you have any further questions, Discord. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the Path of Building. All right guys, so remember, if you do have further questions, if I didn't answer your question in the video, if I didn't answer your question in the Path of Building, join the Discord. It's linked down below. It's the best way to get help with all of my builds, and I'd like for you to just stay and hang out and talk with all the boys. We have a growing community, including a console community. Tons of people on there talking every day. It's the best way to get in touch with me, any of my mobs, or some of the people that you might have met on my stream over at twitch.tv/BigDucks. You can catch me streaming Path of Exile and all kinds of good stuff over there, Monday through Friday, pretty much every single week. Yeah, Lancing Steel, a really solid build that honestly surprised me quite a bit. I didn't expect to be able to get this much life gain per second and to be able to do this much damage with so little gear. Yeah, very, very strong build. Probably a really good league starter for next league. This will probably be included in my league starters. Yeah, very solid build, very surprising, and pretty fun as well. So remember guys, if you enjoy my content, make sure to like this video so that more people can see it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content similar to this, and stay safe out there in raid class, and I'll see you guys in the next video.